Well, we have a pretty good house, full house, nearly full house here, so we may as well get started. Let me introduce myself. I'm Bill Nolting. I'm at the International Center, where I'm in charge of the Education Abroad Office along with the Peace Corps Office. So we assist students in going abroad for educational purposes. That could be to study abroad, or it could be an internship or research abroad. We can also assist with finding funding through the multiple U of M sources to do those things. And we'll work with undergraduates as well as graduate students in all the schools and colleges. And that's the intent of the series that I'm going to introduce to you, the International Career Pathways series. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about ideas that people have about international work. And myths could be, misconceptions that people might have. Before I start this, let me ask how many of you here are undergraduates? And of that number, how many of you are seniors? So how many of you have already studied abroad or done something abroad? Good number, yeah. And then how many of you are graduate school students or professional school? Pretty good number, yeah. And then how many of you are interested in working abroad or doing an internship abroad? Okay, pretty much the whole room. And then developing or building a long-term global career. Also, yeah. So basically, what I'll try to do in this introduction is to compare working abroad, doing these shorter-term kinds of experiences abroad. Short-term can be up to 2 years in the case of something like Peace Corps. But those are programs that are designed to be temporary. They're not career positions. And so I'll contrast those with global careers. So some ideas people have about international work is that you can graduate and go right into a career position where you're located abroad. And in fact, that would be difficult for most people to do. Basically, many career positions require a fair amount of international experience already. So I guess if you're a student, there are a lot of ways to do that. The other thing is that if you look at the longer-term career position, that's most likely to be in your home country, wherever that is, rather than located in another country. And then to look at the good side of this piece, there are plenty of opportunities for you as students and recent graduates to get the international experience. Everything from, an internship for a month, or a study abroad program, or a summer loan, or as long as something like Peace Corps, which is 2 years. And many of the opportunities for getting these educational experiences are supported by grants and fellowships available through various U of M units. The catch there is that you need to be a current U of M student to be eligible for most of those. So while you are still a student, it's the ideal time to try to get some of these international experiences. I should mention that, I forgot to mention, that about 4,000 students a year do study abroad or in an internship or research or volunteering, whether for credit or not. So a lot of students are going abroad. So another idea about international work is that you can work anywhere in the world just like you would in the US. That's assuming you're American, I guess. The reality is that all countries don't want that to happen if you're a foreigner. They will do what they can to not let you work in their country as a foreigner because they're protecting their labor market from foreigners. The US is certainly just as much that way as any country. An opportunity for you as students is that there are ways to get work permits which allow you to do paid work abroad. And let me mention just a special case of any of you going to the United Kingdom, whether for a paid internship or unpaid internship. If you arrive at the border and you don't have a work permit, they will put you on the next plane going home. It's happened to a number of U of M students, even for unpaid internships, even that their professors arranged. Another idea about working abroad is that you can make a lot of money, maybe more than you would in the US. And in general, that's probably not true, with the exception of just a few pretty well-off countries. Japan would be an example. Undergraduates can go into something like the JET program where you're teaching English, and you can do pretty well in that kind of a organized program. But in many parts of the world, the local wages are a fraction of what they are here in this country. They might be $1 a day, sometimes even less. So if you're going abroad as a student, the key to be able to do that and to afford it is to apply for funding through these University of Michigan sources. So one idea would be, maybe it'd be better to do an internship here in the US. And in fact, that would have some benefits because most employers in the US will be using internships as a way to almost test future career employees. If you go abroad, that usually will not be the case because even if you're working for, you name your US company abroad, if you get an internship abroad with that company, back here in the US, it's a different organization, so it's a different company entirely. So an internship abroad generally will not count as that type of entry into a corporation. Indeed. On the other hand, the experience abroad has its own benefits, notably in terms of cross-cultural understanding and also employers. A recent survey showed that some 60% of employers valued students who had gained an international experience while they were students, especially internships. However, that same survey showed that they didn't value the experience in its own right. What they valued were things like what they thought the student would have: flexibility, cross-cultural understanding, skills in communications and decision making. And you need to be able to articulate your experience in a way that makes sense to the employer, that they can value. So one of the sessions in the International Career Pathways is called Going Beyond Awesome. So if they ask you about your experience abroad and you say, it was awesome, man. So you need to be able to describe your experience with more finesse and sort of in ways that the employer or graduate school would value. And a workshop like that can help you do that. So another idea is that if it's an American company abroad and you're a US citizen, they would prefer hiring you, right? Actually, it's not so, because if the company is located abroad, they will prefer local hires. So if there are branches in China, they will definitely want to hire Chinese nationals, not Americans. You can just picture Japan, I'm sorry, some of the Japanese corporations, Toyota or Honda, that have big branches in the United States. And if you go there, it's nearly all Americans working for it. They want to look as American as possible. And so that same idea applies to really all companies. The only exception to that would be if you're already working for the company and you have expertise that's really needed abroad, then that's the kind of person the company would send abroad, maybe for a few months, maybe for a year or so, what they call expats, expatriates. There are a few exceptions to that, such as US government agencies, which are interested in US citizens, notably the State Department and Peace Corps. And they will hire for career positions. So if you're looking for more of a shorter-term internship or research opportunity, we suggest first try to find the opportunity, whether through a program or through contacts with your professors, and then worry about funding, because there are a lot of funding sources. They tend to have deadlines starting in mid-January, some are often a bit later, February, March. And to be competitive for the U of M funding sources, you need to have a really good opportunity lined up and ready to go. So we'll go to our panelists. We have a really great group for you tonight. Our featured panelist is Ted London, who is from the Ross School and the William Davidson Institute. And he'll speak about basically what he's been working with the private sector, corporations, in terms of promoting this sustainable development. And Ted needs to leave because he has to go first thing tomorrow morning. So after he's finished, we'll take 1 or 2 questions and then we'll go on to the rest of the panelists. Okay.
Glad you guys are in. So I'm going to play off of Bill's theme, and I'm going to give you a myth, a reality, and an opportunity. I just thought of this when I came in here. So the myth is, it's great to get international experience or have an international career. The reality, it really is. And the opportunity, it's in your hands. Can you guys hear me okay if I don't stand by the mic? The opportunity is in your hands. I think the paths will vary. But what I've seen with folks that have done this is the glue that's held it together is the vision about what they really want to do with their careers. You can't really predict where you're going to be. I mean, I know that some people love to ask me interview questions. What do you think you're going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years? Oh my God, if I knew that, how boring would life be, right? But the idea is, if you want to do something international, you just got to sort of understand where the opportunities are and then figure out how to make it happen. And some paths are smoother, some paths are bumpier. But in the end, going back to what I said just a minute ago, I think it's really worth it. I think this to some degree is the future of education, of opportunity. And what I want to do, well, maybe track back here on and off. What I want to do is to get you to think about the world different. When you think about international, I don't know what's going through your head, but I bet you when I'm done with my 15 minutes, you might think about it a little differently, and that's the point. So, how many people are on this planet? 7 billion. We crossed over 7 billion a few years ago, I think 7.1, 7.2. They give you exact figures, but actually no one really knows. There's not someone counting every baby and every death and sort of doing it. They have a general idea if they're up 7.1 or 7.2 billion. I don't have a pointer, I guess. But this is the global pyramid, and you think about the 7 billion people. Where do you fit on this global pyramid? The poorest would be at the bottom. We call that the base of the pyramid. Where are you guys on this pyramid? I don't have a pointer. Awesome. Well, oh, that'll work. There you go. So that's a good spot. Do you think you guys are there? Higher or lower? Higher or lower? You guys have that, right? So maybe you want to. Actually, Bill, can you put it a little higher than that?
I lost the mouse.
All kinds of technical. Anyway, imagine that pointer at the very apex of that pyramid. That is where all of you guys are. You are part of the global 1% of the world population. And what's important to realize when you think about that is you are part of the vast, vast, vast minority of the world. Most people don't live like you. They don't have the benefits you do, the infrastructure, the educational opportunities, the health care, the electricity, all the things you take for granted, most people don't have. So when you go overseas, and I'm not, I'm going to try and dissuade you from thinking about internationals going to London or Paris. I want you to think about going international as Nairobi, Kampala, Beijing maybe, Mumbai, Rio. Right, that to me is international. The others are sort of pseudo-US, right? They're very close to the US. And I think if you think about it, that's where most of the world lives. And frankly, in the future, that's where most of the action is going to be internationally. Now, I don't have a site for that. You can just say I said that. But I think it's true. Okay, I can't guarantee that, but if you think about it, it's true. So if we go forward on this a little bit. This is basically, we can argue about the numbers, this is basically the way the world population shapes out. And what you see is around 5 billion people in what we call the base of the pyramid. Those are people that live in low-income markets. Those are the people that don't have as much as we do and are increasingly recognizing they don't. And this is where the action is, in my opinion. You guys you got 3 or 4 other panelists coming, they may differ with me, but that's okay. And to me, this is where you want to be. Why now? Why is this so interesting now? Well, I'll just give you a little perspective. I was born in 1963, so you can figure out, that I'm a little over 50 now. In my 50 plus years on this planet, the global population has more than doubled. There's been almost 4 billion people born in my life, or 4 billion people added to the population of my life. Where do you think most of them have been born into? Go back to my slide. You think of the top of the pyramid, the middle of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid. Base. And where is it heading? Where's the population supposed to be in 2050? No one's sure. 9 billion? So if a person like me lives 87 years, right? I know you're going to root for me for more. Let's just say 87 years. Population in my lifetime will have nearly tripled, and will have added 6 billion, most of whom who live in what we're calling the base of the pyramid. So if you think about opportunity, growth, excitement, what's not to love? Well, I'll show you a few things that you might find a little disconcerting. Some might see opportunity, others see challenge. All right, I may have to stick back here because I'll have to click through this. But how many of you have been to what we call, now the base of the pyramid is a market, not a country, so you could go to Shanghai in China and see all the wealthy people, right? But there's also a base of the pyramid. So who has been to an emerging market and seen the base of the pyramid? Does it look something like this? Right? Kind of vendors, those are kids that probably should be at school, but they're not. This is a little bit more urban, kind of settling out in the traffic. That's a little more rural, someone collecting their eggs. That's sort of traditional. There are other livelihoods, of course, but farming plays a very big role. Does that sort of look like your house? That looks like a good house in the base of the pyramid. Right, so almost 2 billion children. For the 2 billion children, almost a third of them lack adequate shelter, sanitation. That looks nice, right? Guess what? That's a pretty good toilet for the vast majority of the world. How many of you guys have used this? It's not that bad, is it? I don't know the comments here. But some people would dream to have that, frankly. So 1.1 billion people in developing countries have inadequate access to water, and 2.6 billion lack sanitation, and 1.4 billion children die each year because of lack of safe drinking water and sanitation. Healthcare, it's a pretty happy scene. That's pretty good healthcare in the developing world. Right, so there's 1 billion people lack access to the healthcare system. Over 8 million children under the age of 5 die from malnutrition and mostly preventable diseases. So I hope you're seeing both the gap and the opportunity to have an impact. Right? This isn't the future, this is the present. Energy, same thing. Right, a big gap, a big opportunity. And then I'll ask you, what is this? What have I taken a picture through a window? This was when I was in Malawi a few years back, quite a number of years back now. What is this picture? I heard it. A school. Yeah. Where are the books? Desks. One teacher. All the kids, all the subjects. And if the kids are lucky enough, they get to go. Well, you come to my office in the business school, you'll see this picture up there because it reminds me of two things. One, it reminds me about how lucky we are. Just by where we were born, we get all kinds of opportunities. And second, it reminds me that kids, no insult to you guys, kids in that picture are just as smart as all the people in this room. They're not dumb because they're poor. That's something we tend to forget. So I'm going to test you on something. See what you think. So think about the map of the world. Can you picture it in your mind's eye? What's front and center? When you look at a map, what do you see first? Private island. U.S. If the U.S. draw it, you see the U.S. If the Europeans draw it, you see Europe. So if you go across the Atlantic, you'll see the map looks slightly different. What happens if all the maps were designed like this? What's front and center now? Africa, right? Brazilian colleagues love this one. What's changed about the world? Did you fall off because we turned the map upside down? Right? Nothing's changed, except maybe how we see the world. And if you want to do international careers, and especially based in pyramid, you sometimes have to recognize that there are some myths in how you think about opportunities and the people in this context. So, when I think of base, when I say base of the pyramid or core, what are 3 words that come to mind? I'm going to ask you to write them down, so think them in your head. So I'm going to call on a few lucky volunteers. So what are 3 words that come to mind when you think of the core, the base of the pyramid, and emerging markets? I've got no name tag, so I'm going to have to do it by shirt color. You can only come up with 1 or 2, that's okay. Anyone want to volunteer?
Low capacity.
Low capacity. Good. Others? No pressure, there's no grade today. No one wants to look. Yes, please.
Colonialism?
Pardon?
Colonialism?
The history of colonialism. And oppression, maybe? Yeah. Black shirt with a mountain or something?
Malnutrition.
Malnutrition. Well, you're already injured, but you can't run away. Limited resources.
I was going to say life development.
Life development. This isn't very hard. Sir? Is it Polish or is it alligator? Or sanitation?
Resourceful?
Resourceful. Ah, that sounds good. Others?
Exploitation.
By that or of that? Maybe one more, yeah.
Startups.
Startups. Say more. I don't know what that means.
I think in a lot of emerging markets, a lot of the new businesses have to deal with maybe new technology startups or being resourceful and developing technology.
Yeah, I kind of like that and resourceful. So here's the way I think about the base of the pyramid. Partners, colleagues, and advisors. We have a tendency when we go to the developing world to think how we are going to help them. When we do that, what role do we assume? Teacher, right? And what do they become? Students. We're in charge, they're the followers. And if you're going to work in this context, you have to realize they are just as smart as we are. If you want to solve problems, you have to treat them with respect and figure out how to integrate. And this is so, to me, this is in some respects so obvious, but so easy to forget. It becomes maybe this myth. People say this, but they do it. And this is what makes it so exciting, because you have so many people that are so smart and so thoughtful, that really have energy, that want to make a difference and change their lives and the lives around them. And that's contagious. If you think about impact and you want to do international careers, that's pretty amazing. And the groundwork is there. So hopefully that gets you a sense of the opportunity and maybe how to think about it. And then I'll just tell you my journey really quickly. How many of you guys are engineering students? There's still all right. I'm an engineer. It was a great background. I was an engineer at Lehigh University, and I went to work for General Motors. For me, it was really interesting to help me think. The one thing I didn't get out of engineering was an opportunity to see the big picture. I went to the Peter Drucker School, which was for an MBA. I worked for a large consulting firm doing what they call business valuation. And then, talked about, this is kind of where I started. So in 1989, I went in the Peace Corps. And for the past 25 years, I've been doing pretty much all international. I've been fortunate enough to have been to, I think, more than 80 countries now. And it's just, and I can't, my journey's not typical, but it's not atypical. And it was sort of thinking about where are the opportunities, what do I really want to do? And what I decided I wanted to do in the Peace Corps was to think about how to use the power of business to address social issues. And that's what I still do now. And I've done it in a lot of different ways in different places. But that theme, that's been the glue. It's taken me a lot of different places. I did this next for a conservation organization. So I was in the nonprofit world and I ran their enterprise development activities in Asia Pacific. Really thinking about how you link environmental protection, or economic development with environmental protection, things like ecotourism and sustainably harvested rainforest products. I then went to Indonesia and ran a joint venture which was focused on procuring cinnamon for local farmers. So I had very close ties to the local cooperative there. Then I went to North Carolina to pursue my PhD with a real focus. I had a PhD in strategy, but I said, you know what? I really want to think about the role of business and social issues, particularly in poverty. And they said, what are you, an idiot? There are no jobs in that field, right? I don't know how many of you guys have made it over to business school, but we have departments in strategy and marketing and finance. We don't have anything on poverty alleviation. All right, but I said, no, this is what I really want to do. This is how I want to make a difference. You know, I have a PhD in strategy, but I've maintained my focus. And I was kind enough to be invited to come to the Davidson Institute in the Ross School a little over 10 years ago. And that's what I stayed focused on, is thinking about the role of business and poverty. That's just my team, right? But that's been the glue that sort of said, what do I want to do? What don't I want to do? How do I make decisions going forward? So these are just some of the statistics. You know, 1.2 billion children live, or half of the world's children live in poverty. 1.2 billion children don't have adequate housing. Nearly 2 million children die each year from waterborne diseases. 1.6 billion people lack electricity. More than 1 billion people lack access to dependable, safe water. The big point is that those are big numbers, but you know where they all start with? They start with the power of one. Right? It takes one person to get going. It's not a group. You start with one and you build. So, although the numbers are daunting, the opportunity to have an impact as an individual is still pretty significant. So, that's my plea for you guys to think about globally about internship opportunities or international careers or whatever it is, and then think for yourselves, you know, what is the impact I want to have? What's the glue that might hold my career together? And of course, I'm biased, but you don't have to follow that logic. That was just the logic that I pursued over the past, I guess, coming on 25, 30 years now. I'll stop there. See if you guys got any questions. Are you thinking a little differently about international now? Did I deliver on my promise? That's good. Any questions?
It's not a simple question. I wouldn't expect a simple answer, but it's kind of tied into current events. That would you see that there would be opportunities coming forward in Europe today to address the crisis of migrants and other things? Like, are there opportunities in the first world to address the issues that are coming out of the developing world?
Yes. And I mean, the migrant issue is a whole sort of set of issues that's behind it, like what's causing the migration. And when I think about what I do, I mean, the challenge that I would hope to do is we can create an environment where this kind of migration doesn't happen, right? But once it's happened, there's all kinds of opportunities. You know, I don't do disaster relief. It's a very important thing, but there's huge opportunities in thinking about disaster relief. So part of it, sometimes you got to fix the problems, but we also sometimes have to change the enabling conditions as well. So yeah, I think there is, and I suspect now there's certainly a lot of money being funneled there. So yeah, there's opportunity. And these issues aren't going away, right? People are increasingly dissatisfied with what life's given them so far.
Did you find that at Deloitte there were a fair amount of projects that deal with social issue projects?
I think there are now. When I was there, I did what's called business valuation. So we were looking at mergers and acquisitions, and they were all in the California market. So you know, I went from San Diego to San Francisco, basically. So, and at that time, they weren't that international. This was before they merged with Tooth Ross and that kind of stuff. So that wasn't really. I actually left Deloitte, not because they didn't have it, but there wasn't a pathway for me there at that time to do that. But a good firm. But now, certainly, I mean, that's one of the ways you can think about companies, because you don't have to jump into an international career immediately. One of the things Bill's highlighted, there's some challenges in doing that. Sometimes if you don't have international experience, you might have a set of skills that people want to bring in. And then some of these organizations are the big consulting firms who do a fair amount internationally as well.
When and how did you realize that you wanted to work on something like the first world with other countries but more developing ones?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Yes.
I think I was lucky enough that I was able to do a little traveling early on. And one of the things I did a round the world trip, and I started on in sort of I went sort of east to west, right? I could get this right, east to west. So I was sort of in Asia first, and then I ended in Europe. Man, Europe is really boring. Right? There was just so much action and so much going on, and there's just so much energy. And all these other places, I got to Europe, I'm like, okay, everything runs right. This is pretty easy. I still got pickpocketed only in Europe, right? Nowhere else. I only had to pick it up, pocketed once when I was in Rome. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think that was sort of just having seen what other countries. It seemed like there was so much more excitement. And then, I went into the Peace Corps, and that sort of helped confirm that that was something I really wanted to do. I'm good. Well, I wish all you guys the very best. I'm really glad you're here because I think you will not regret giving serious consideration to an international opportunity, either as a career or as something you do that helps you really shape how you see the domestic world. And I do think that employers like people that can see the world with different lenses. So no matter what you choose to do, I think it'll help you. So, good luck.
So now we're going to have our other panelists, and tonight's panel is a little heavy on international education, although I think that the ways that our panelists got to where they are would apply to any field. And I do want to just point out on the rest of the series, there are a number of sessions that focus on specific careers. So environmental careers, 3 on engineering, 1 on information, 1 on global health. So there's still a lot more to come. But so we'll start with Audrey Buswell, my colleague at the International Center. And I should mention 2 of our panelists are Americans, and our third, my colleague at the International Center, came from China to the United States, and so she'll describe that journey. Audrey.
Great. So hi everybody, my name is Audrey Buswell. I am the Education Abroad Coordinator in the Education Abroad Office in the International Center here on campus. And I'll talk a little bit about my overall experiences that I've had abroad on different programs, what led me to them, and what kind of impact they've had on me in my personal and professional life. And then I'll get into some tips or advice and things I wish I had known before I started off on my journey through this sort of internationally focused career. So my first real experience abroad was when I was 19. I did an academic year study abroad program in Ireland, and I did that with the knowledge that I wanted to do something long term. I knew in high school that I wanted to do something internationally focused as a career, and to me at the time I thought I need to get substantial experience abroad in order to do that. And I have to say that it definitely opened up a lot of avenues that I don't think I normally would have ever come across. So I started in Ireland, and I was able to really travel around most of Western and Eastern Europe, and I think that I think to me at the time it was really exciting, contrary to what our previous speaker said. And so I genuinely learned a lot and think that it was definitely a valuable experience, and don't regret going to Western Europe and traveling around and getting experience that way to sort of get my feet wet. After my experience in Ireland, I knew that this is definitely something I wanted to do, so I ended up joining the Peace Corps, and I graduated in May and left for Kazakhstan in August. So I spent about 2.5 years teaching English at a teacher's college in Kazakhstan near the Russian border. And while I was there, I learned Russian and led summer camps and organized teachers' conventions and conferences and lots of student groups and English clubs and yoga clubs. And something that I think, Peace Corps definitely gave me the professional experience that I was looking for. On a study abroad program, you're getting your feet wet in the international world, but truly working abroad in something like Peace Corps or something like JET or EPIC, where you're an actual staff member working with the local people and interacting with locals. I was able to develop skills, language skills, and the ability to really be resourceful in ways I had never been forced to be resourceful before. So I feel like I'm always pushing Peace Corps on students I meet with in my office, but I do think that it was the single most, I would say, important experience of my life, in that the people that you meet, the local people that you meet, and the things that you learn about yourself in a context that forces you out of your comfort zone, is something that I'll never be able to. I don't think you can get that kind of experience in very many other ways as a U.S. citizen at 22 years old. So definitely, when I was there, I learned that this is something that I want to continue. I want to work in this field, and I want to be involved in international education in some way. So when I came back, I started my graduate schooling at American University in Washington, D.C., and my master's is in international training and education. And while I was working on my master's, I worked for an NGO called American Councils for International Education, and they primarily work in the former Soviet Union states, which is why I was initially very interested in it. But now they work all over the world. They're entering South America, certain African countries, and still they're heavily in the former Soviet Union. But I worked on the Critical Language Scholarship Program while I was getting my master's degree, and I think that this is important to note because the work experience that I gained while I was studying the field really helped to first of all justify paying that much for a master's degree, and know that it was worthwhile, and it was definitely something that I was helped sort of confirm everything that I was thinking about doing. So that's how I sort of ended up there, and then now here I work at the Education Abroad office, and what's interesting about this field is that what I enjoy about it is seeing students who maybe wouldn't normally think that they're able to go abroad and finding avenues for them to do so. And I think that you are all here because you're interested in careers abroad, and I think it's a scary thing to try to start, and it's confusing, and part of what I love about what I do now is sort of trying to help guide people through this experience. So I guess just some things I wish I had known before I went abroad. I wish I would have, in any situation that you find yourself in, internationally or here at the university or anywhere really, putting yourself out there and joining clubs and starting organizations and meeting new people, I think is the single most important thing that you can do. Making those connections and forcing yourself out of your comfort zone every single day is the most important thing that you can do, and I think it took me way too long to figure that out, and I spent a lot of time not doing that. So definitely that's something that I think is really important. And then also learn the language. I think if you're serious about having an international career, it is absolutely vital that you can speak that language and well. So take your language classes seriously. There are programs that you can if you're still a student here. The Critical Language Scholarship Program, for example, is a fully funded program that sends students abroad to learn languages. So there are lots of opportunities to do so. I can't stress that enough. And then really. Lastly, I think, I think that's really all I wanted to say. So I'll pass it over to Ebony now.
So hi, my name is Ebony Ellis. I'm a senior program advisor in the Center for Global Intercultural Study in LSA. And so we advise and send abroad students who want to go abroad in undergraduate at the University of Michigan. And as my colleague here Audrey was saying, I started out pretty young in studying abroad. I did my initial studies studying abroad as a student. And actually, I'm from Georgia. I went to Albany State University in South Georgia. The founder of Camp Adventure Child and Youth Services, which is a program that I started out with, is a partner program with the U.S. Department of Defense and Department of State. So I worked a lot with the military, the embassies abroad. And so he came to recruit at my university, and I would never forget the first thing that he told us, and I always say this. He said, I promise you, if you do my program, I'll take you around the world. And he actually did that for all of us. He took us around the world, places that I never thought that I would ever see. My first time on a plane was with the program, and flying around the world and working with the military and the embassies was the best experiences of my life. I actually got my undergraduate degree in history and minor education. I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, but I went another avenue in that. And so with Camp Adventure, I was actually a student intern abroad. We worked a lot with YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, providing those programs and services for children and youth abroad that parents or the family members are affiliated with the U.S. Military, embassies, and NATO bases abroad. So I was between Germany, Belgium, and England, Italy, Japan, China. And then while I was living in Germany for a majority of that time, I was able to travel all around of Europe, and then also when I was in China, Japan, I was able to travel around quite a bit, and then also down in Key West, Florida, the Navy base there, and also in Hawaii for some time as well, working with the military base, specifically the Navy and the Marine base there. And then doing the program, I started out as a student, working hands-on with the children. And then from there, I just started working my way up. And, as the presenter said, and I will say this, always be mindful of who you are around. Yes, you are coming in and you don't want to be like the savior of everyone, but also be conscious of, these are your partners as well. You never know who's watching you to help you. And the people that I work with, they really were there to help me. And I moved from being a student to a director to being a project coordinator, and I moved to the highest position that there could be, which was a project director. And I was over the European operations between in Germany. And within the program that I was working with Camp Adventure, they actually, I took a little break in between, and I went to Iowa, where the program is headquartered at the University of Northern Iowa, and they actually paid for my master's degree. And I got my master's degree on leisure, youth, and human services, with focusing on international studies and service learning with nonprofit organizations. Within that program, in master's degree, I was able to work with the leisure organization. We went to China for different conferences in Hong Kong, Hangzhou, and also in Beijing. It was a really amazing experience working with them. And so after I received my master's degree in leisure, youth, and human services, I took a little break from Camp Adventure, and I said I want to try a little something different to see if there was another avenue that I wanted to go in and working with the military. And so I ended up doing the military extension internship, which is with Purdue University. With this internship, you pick a sector that you want to work in with the military, and then from there, you go to an internship, and afterwards it helps develop you to actually apply for an actual position in the military. So many of my colleagues end up working in Cuba, and the military bases there, or living abroad, working on the military bases there, or actually back in the U.S. working in the military. And so, being able to be a part of Camp Adventure, that was one of my main breaks of studying abroad, really getting a good international experience, as well as a work experience and life experience as well. Working with the military abroad, I've seen a lot, working with the embassies as well. The children and youth there abroad, they may not have the youth program capacities that we may have here in the U.S. So we were there to provide those programs for them, while a lot of times the troops were deployed. And so we were stepped right in to provide those facilities for them, and to really enhance the program, not take over, but really enhance the military embassy programs there. And I also worked with the international schools as well while I was abroad in those locations. So, I say this to say that, I know as undergraduates, when I was an undergrad, I knew that I wanted to do something big in my life, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And you have to really start from the bottom. You can't build a chimney from the top. It's gonna fall. So you have to start from the bottom and look at getting into those internships, because that's how you get your foot in the door. When you're applying through an internet and your application is going up amongst everyone else. But then when you have your foot in the door, that employer says, oh wait, I remember Ebony, she actually interned for us a couple of years ago. They're able to pull you out so you can be able to get your foot in the door for an interview, and they'll be able to see your actual personality and like, oh well, she's really a great fit for the position. So we'd like to invite her to come in and interview for the job, and hopefully, you're able to obtain the job. So I say that to say that, I know when you graduate, you have big hopes of doing everything, but look at those internships and nonprofit programs to get your foot in the door, to make a name for yourself, and also get some work experience as well, because a lot of the employers are looking for more hands-on work experience as well. And so I know for myself, coming to the University of Michigan, I was actually in Germany January of 2014, and I decided, well, I really want to come back to the U.S. I've had a great time living abroad, so I decided to really come back to the U.S. and I came back and actually applied for a job here at the University of Michigan. And thankfully, I had all the study abroad experiences and experience working with the military to help me get the job interview and to actually go into the interview. And when they're asking me different questions, I was able to answer them with examples as well, not just giving the answer, but giving a really good example of this is what I did and this is what how I can use that to fit in this position as well. So thinking about those things too. And so now with the Center for Global Intercultural Study, I really work with programs going to the UK, outbound programs going to Australia, and I work with this really cool program called GIEU. It's Global Intercultural Experience for Undergraduates. It's really like a service learning program, almost similar to the Peace Corps in a way. And it's a winter, summer, and fall component to the program. Students start out, we get students ready in the winter term, ready for what they're about to experience, because you're not going to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Even though I've been there, it's beautiful, but that's not where the students are going. Students are going to Uganda, working with children with disability. Children are going to Indonesia, working with culture and preservation. Students are going to Brazil, Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico, working with local artists and helping them market their art on the internet so they can be able to make a living off of this amazing art that they make. And so that's really what GIEU is. It's really service learning based. Students go with a group of other students with a faculty member there, and they're there for about 3-4 weeks on site. And then when they come back to school in the fall, they actually don't leave what they learned or some of the things they work with our partner programs on site. They actually bring it back with them to Ann Arbor to share what they have learned and hopefully inspire others. And not only with the students, what they've learned about service learning, not only leaving it there, but also continuing the work here, finding a local organization that they can continue their work on here at the University of Michigan or in Ann Arbor or wherever they're from in general. So that's a little bit more about me, but yeah. But I will say that honestly, I would have never thought that I would have ever been abroad. I was the first person in my family to really get on an airplane. So I've had the experience of a lifetime and never knew what it was going to be like until I came to an interest meeting like you all are now. You just come to the meeting, and I came to an interest meeting and someone told me they would help me go abroad, and never knew that I would take a route in international education until I went abroad and I said, this is what I want to do. So.
What a story, huh? So, my name is Kate Jung. I work at International Center as a program coordinator. So my personal story is a little bit different from my two colleagues here, but probably will resonate with those who are international students sitting in the audience. I did my undergrad in China. I'm Chinese, and then worked 5 years in China, working with international students and scholars coming to China in the 80s, and you can guess my age. I'm the same generation with actually Professor Ted London, so you can get. So at that point, it was not a lot of Westerners coming to China at that point. And then it was very difficult to even go abroad for Chinese at that point because all the policies, etc. So in my generation, after working 5 years, at that point, the government would release us, say, because everything, education was paid by Chinese government in my generation, not anymore. So the government felt like you gotta work 5 years before you can go abroad. So I paid my dues, worked 5 years, and an opportunity came. An American professor coming to the university medical school that I worked for every year to give lectures. Just noticed something maybe me personally unique, personality, etc., etc. And one day, just out of a very casual conversation, and he said, "Have you ever thought about going overseas?" And I said, "No." And I said, "I love my job, working at university in a very good environment. I have never thought, never crossed my mind, I'll tell you." And I say, "No, I'm not going anywhere. I love my job, and this is wonderful." And then he, convinced me after long conversation, years, and I finally say, "Okay, I'll go for 1 year and I'll come back." So at that point, the Chinese government policies, they will keep your job for 1 year. You can go, and I still get paid salary 1 year while I came to the United States. After 1 year, and they're like, "Bye, you're not coming back." But after 1 year, and then at that point extended the second year, I'll say, "Oh, maybe I'll stay another year." At that point so I came to the U.S. in '92. At that point, the limit coming to the U.S. as a visiting scholar to begin with was up to 3 years. So towards the end of my 3 years, the professor who brought me here asked me, "What's next?" I knew at that point there's no way that I can go home because I don't have a job anymore. I mean, I could have returned to China. But thinking I've been here, living here for 3 years, and what's next? And he said at that point, computer science is very popular, or maybe, MBA degree would be good, Kate, to get a job for you. And then my background was English language and literature. And I said, "I don't like business. I don't like those numbers." And he said, "Do something else, computer science." And I said, "Well, no, that's not my specialty." And one day that in the office that I volunteered, and one person said, "What about getting a degree in education or college student personnel, something you might be interested because you have been working in international education?" And I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting, but where do I go to get money to pay for my tuition?" And she said, "Well, if you want to think about it, I'll work on it, get assistantship for you, maybe." And then so I put together, took GRE 2 months, and then barely passed the GRE, and now I'm talking about it's really shame, the culture that I come from, barely made it, took the GRE, and then also at that point I was from volunteering in an international office in the US, and up to the point that I also want to do some internship outside international education, so I know that I would have more options. So I did my internship with admissions office, and also did my resident life experience while I was a graduate student as well. So I know I would have many options if one day after graduation a job opportunity may come up. So one thing that I guess I can share with a lot of you, no matter your U.S. international students, is making sure you do put your options, a wide range of things, rather than this is all I want and don't consider anything else. Resident life at that point, I say, will be very challenging for somebody coming from overseas and not having any experience living on campus here. But I did it. I have to say that's the highlight of my experience living in the United States. I learned so much about working in resident life, doing programs, and working with people in the team as well. So fast forward, and before I graduated, and a job opportunity came up in the same office that I volunteered, and then I worked as a graduate assistant. From that point, and in 1998, University of Michigan had a job opportunity, so I joined Michigan in 98 and has been working at International Center since then, except with a brief left UM and went to University of Pennsylvania and turned around, no, I want to come back to Ann Arbor, so came back again. So in my career path, it seems to be very simple, straightforward, international education. That's probably because my prior experience working in China in the same field, international education. So when people ask me, how did you know you want to work in this field? I would say it's because my previous experience working in this particular field, and I knew exactly if one day I returned back to China, I would do the same thing again. Of course, it's not everything, as beautiful, as short as I described, and this is, fast forward 23 years now, since I came to the U.S. A lot of challenges. a lot of challenges personally, academically, family, and everything, and you always ask yourself, why did I come to the United States? When you ask, have you ever regretted? I will be lying to tell you, no, I have never regretted. There were times that I regret, why did I come here? I have a wonderful job and wonderful family and everybody. It was a challenging when I reached the point my husband was studying in Japan, I am here, so where do we go? Do I move to Japan or should he come to the United States? But eventually he sacrificed, he came to the US and it's a happy ending. But I will say, it wasn't just something, everything worked out smoothly. That's something that I keep in mind when you think about this, especially when you have a family, so you have the obligation there. And then there are, of course, from the international students perspective, there are US regulation barrier as well, so I'm going to make it very short and not going into details. Especially after September 11th, and US government regulation are very strict. For those of you international students who want to work in international education, if you want to become one of the international students and scholars, that's how I started. I worked 10 years in doing immigration regulation. You have to keep in mind, working as international students and scholars does require you to be a US citizen, because as a designated school official, that is what the US government regulation says. So you do have that big barrier right in front of you if one day you want to do that. Having said that, that doesn't mean, don't think about working in international education at all. Because think about other possibilities. Right now, I don't work with immigration regulation at all. I do programming. I oversee summer orientation. I do programming to support international students and scholars and families. And then I know people, colleagues working in Office of New Students Program, doing mentor program. And I know other colleagues working maybe in admissions office. So there are many, many other opportunities, even though there is a barrier because of the US regulations. So keep your options open. Do you look at the opportunities, try in doing volunteer opportunities. I think you heard from my colleagues, Ebony talk about that as well. Look for opportunities that you can volunteer, make the connections, and take advantage of the people who are in the office. Professional people who can guide you through that path would be really beneficial. You always want to do some maybe information, interview. How did you end up doing what you are doing here? What was kind of the path that you took? And people will be very willing to share their personal story with you. So, thank you.
Great hand for our wonderful panelists. I want to remind all of you to be sure to fill out one of these session evaluations. We're always looking to improve and to learn from you. And having said that, we'll open up the panel for questions. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, this is sort of directed more for the Peace Corps, but if you don't know, this language of a developing country coming out of undergraduate, did you find, or do you think that you'd maybe be barred from a lot of the opportunities that would be abroad there, or would they kind of work with you on that?
Yeah, so I actually had no experience speaking Russian before I went. I had no knowledge of it. So I think some of, particularly South American countries, there are so many Americans who speak fluent Spanish that it is sort of an unwritten rule that you should have some knowledge of Spanish. And that's also true of French, of some certain African countries as well. But beyond that, they're definitely very flexible. So, there just aren't very many Americans who speak, Azerbaijani or French or Russian. So yeah, I think that they're definitely willing to work with you if you're willing to be flexible about maybe where you go.
Question?
For Ebony, what program had you started traveling abroad?
It was a program called Camp Adventure Child and Youth Services. It's a program that's out of the University of Northern Iowa and Cedar Falls, Iowa, and they're a contract partner with the U.S. Department of State and Department of Defense.
Other questions? Yes, in the back.
This is another question for Ebony. Would you say that the experience with the State Department in Germany or in other countries was isolated as in only kind of a U.S. enclave, or were you actually exposed to the German culture or the culture of other places?
I definitely had that intercultural experience because working in the facilities we worked with a lot of nationals as well. And so we really collaborated and really worked together. It wasn't an I team, it was a we team, and we really worked together to fulfill the mission. And I was there for so long, they became my family away from home. So I spent my Christmas with them, even, you know, Thanksgiving, which is an American holiday. I remember being in Italy and we didn't, you know, there's no turkey, and so it was like, we bought a duck. And I was like, okay. So we had duck for Thanksgiving, but they became my family. When I was in China, they were my family by the time that I was living there, because I was so far away from my family. And so they were my colleagues, but then they also became, you know, a part of my life as well. So I was meeting their friends and family, and then you have your own little circle of German community there. They take you into their home.
Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I guess maybe a question I have is sort of where do you sort of find these sort of scholarships? I guess sort of I'm not really sure. I don't really know where to find these sort of opportunities exactly.
So, are you an undergraduate or graduate student?
Undergraduate, yeah.
As an undergraduate, there are global programs offices for all the schools and colleges. Are you in LS&A?
Yeah.
So, actually, Evan can speak up.
I actually brought our program brochures if you want to stick around, and it's our Study Abroad brochure. We have a lot of programs here, and I also brought some program flyers for GIE, the program that I was referencing to. Then we also have another program that's in Senegal, and it's for the French language as well. So we have lots of programs. And this booklet also, it talks a little bit more about all the programs and where will local study take you, and that's one of our main things that we talk about. So if you would like one, please come down. I also have my card if you'd like to email me, and we can talk about going abroad and some of the study abroad options. Because I will say a lot of students who study abroad, even going to Oxford for the academic year, a lot of their recommendations that go for grad school or their job, they actually end up asking their professors or their tutors from Oxford University or the universities from abroad, because they're going to use them to their advantage, because that name means a lot on the resume. So.
Now they can put a plug in for the programs CGIS runs. If you're an LS&A student, you will get LS&A credit, and there's a lot of financial aid available as well. And that's actually true for all of the study abroad programs offered throughout the university. The university also increasingly offers internship programs. So LS&A has its own international internship program, and that will be featured in the panel Thursday this week. They will be there along with Ross, engineering will be there. So there really are a lot of university-supported opportunities for going abroad. Yes?
As a freshman for the Opportunities Fair, do you have to have a resume made?
So our question is, for the International Opportunities Fair, do you need to have a resume ready for that? Probably not, just because that fair attracts a lot of organizations that are basically study abroad programs or internship programs. So you apply, you know, they'll charge fees. Some of them don't charge fees, but the majority do. So it's really just like applying to study abroad programs. Yes, in the back?
So is it possible for an international student to study abroad, outside the U.S.
Sure, yeah.
with financial aid?
The question is, can an international student study abroad and with financial aid? Basically, the story about financial aid is that if you are already receiving financial aid from the university, then you can use that aid to study abroad. If you're not receiving financial aid from the university, then it's kind of a moot point. There are some scholarships available through various parts of the university that do not have citizenship restrictions, and they are not, they're called merit-based. If it's merit-based, then financial need does not enter into it. So there are some merit-based scholarships available from the university, which could be an option.
As you know, one of our students, she's actually at London School of Economics for the academic year, and she's from China, she's an international student here, and she was able to apply for the scholarships that London School of Economics was offering to students who were visiting, which students who go abroad there, they're visiting study abroad students. So she was able to get a substantial amount of financial aid as well, and then whoever her sponsor was in the U.S., was able to write them a letter and say, you know, please redirect the funds to this school for the academic year.
Yes, in the back?
What are the costs associated with the GIEU program?
So the program cost is $19.50, and then you also, your flight to the location as well, and that's really it. And then also your visa and maybe on-site expenses. With the program cost, it also includes most meals and also includes your homestay or your housing. And I will say that, you know, students, LSA, you can apply for the LSA Global Scholarship for GIEU, and then students who have Pell Grant, the program fee is waived. And the application deadline is November 5th for that payment, by the way.
Do you have some brochures there about the internships, international internships?
So brochures about the internships, I don't think we have them here with us, but if you're interested in internships,
Yeah, and do you have access to find some international internships?
the easiest way is to come to that session Thursday if you can, because those will be all of the internship programs offered by the university for undergraduates. It's Thursday in same time, 6 to 7:30 in the Ross School, Blau Auditorium. You're welcome. Maybe stumped you all, but those are excellent questions, and we'll stick around as a panel if you have individual questions, so please feel free to come down, and thank you for all your attention tonight.